Welcome again to the All Four Downs podcast. I'm Ovi1, and thank you for subscribing and listening to the All Four Downs podcast. There's a lot of chaos going on in college football, from Memphis' nail-biting win to Alabama's narrow escape. I'm breaking down all the biggest games, dive into Brian Kelly's uncertain future at LSU, and debates whether or not Ohio State is truly the number one team compared to other top teams in the rankings. Plus, I'm going to end it with a bold prediction. Yeah, I got some road teams are going to win this weekend. So let's dive into it, shall we? Here we go. Let's start off with first down and some top games here. Memphis squeaks by and defeats South Florida 34-31, scoring 17 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Yeah, I mean, it's a big comeback, especially for Memphis making a statement, and for South Florida being in the top 25. Ouch. That left, kind of a damper in there to remain in the top. But for Memphis, it's a good bounce back because now it's just looking like Memphis needs to keep up with Navy in the American Conference. Texas A&M just outlasted LSU 49-25, which begs the question about Brian Kelly's future in LSU. But for the Aggies, man, they're playing some good old football. And I agree with their head coach about it doesn't matter what happened last year in the history. It's what's happening now. And what's happening now, right, is that the Aggies are 8-0, 5-0 in an SEC, and number one in the standings. Let's put it at. And speaking more about the SEC, Ole Miss bounces back from losing to Georgia, go ahead and defeats Oklahoma, scoring 9 points in the fourth quarter to make it 34-26. For Oklahoma, it's a setback, but they can easily bounce back because they are still in contentions to making it to the playoffs because they got more ranked scheduled teams remaining. Vanderbilt defeating Missouri 17-10, a great defensive game. Awesome. And I love the story with Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt for a long time being in the basement in the SEC are making history as we speak. And Alabama squeaks by against South Carolina 29-22. Man, I mean, this game should have been a big L for Alabama. And it just the effortness of that defense from South Carolina. I don't know, man. Just left scratching my head as to what are you doing? What are you doing? I don't know. Don't know what's going on in South Carolina, but it's these soft tackles and everything else. I'm just gonna leave it as is. Alabama just barely making it. Yeah, they got a good game against Georgia, but I just got a feeling that, and again, it's my opinion, my point of view. There's a couple of games in which Alabama should have took an L, but taking advantage, they're 7-1, 5-0 in SEC, competing head to head with Texas A&M. They're still playing in football, and for some schools, they got an easy schedule remaining. For others, is a bigger challenge, and let's see if that's a factor in the top 25. Let alone, the top 12. Let's go ahead and move on to second down. Brian Kelly in the hot seat, and I'm just in a sense confused as to why decisions are not being made. Other colleges have been firing their head coaches, especially this new era of the NIL and trying to get these recruits. But for Brian Kelly, look at his history right now. Entering his fourth season with LSU, and yet right now, currently, they're 5-3. They're 2-3 in the conference. And this is the coach that turned things around for Notre Dame, actually competed in the college football playoffs for one season, and to move on again to head coach LSU. It just seems like things are not going well. They're just depleting. 10-4 his first year, 10-3 is the second year. Finished 9-4, borderline, not the expectation to have. And now you're 5-3, probably fighting his way to get at least 6 wins in this season. Does Brian Kelly stay with LSU? Now, some commenting saying that he is safe, right? But it is, the management, the I don't know. There's just more to it. You have all that talent. Supposedly, you got all this talent that returned, but you're not putting it there. This is supposed to be the next national champion. I'm sorry, but Brian Kelly is not the answer for LSU. Looking out at the next 4 games, LSU has to play at Alabama. Then they got Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and then finish the season at Oklahoma. So right now, I'm already predicting that they might have a split 2-2. And therefore, their record will be 7-5. Now, that's a backwards because you're looking at this and where is that fire in LSU? And it seems like the later the game goes, that they just fall flat. And if you look at the A&M game, A&M exposed them. This is the game that LSU is supposed to win, and they didn't get the job done. I'm sorry, man. I don't know. Could we hear anything this week for the firing of Brian Kelly? Or is it too expensive enough to fire him and therefore he has to be there for another season? There's a lot of investments that's got to be made, and I get it. And that's what you get for paying so much money for a head coach that's not producing any championship, let alone being in contention or contenders for the SEC. Let's go ahead and move on to other news. Luke Fickell, Wisconsin, he should have stayed in Cincinnati. He was doing so awesome there, right? And went ahead and got a new job, couple of seasons with Wisconsin, and nothing, just absolutely nothing for Wisconsin. Florida State, Mike Norvell. Look, you had the opportunity. You did the right thing, getting these coaches to be assistant coaches for you, and yet you started from the top. Now you're hitting rock bottom. Bye bye, Mike Norvell. Hugh Freeze, I think he is safe. In my opinion, I like this guy. I think he got bad luck this season with these games, close games, and everything else, and the calls not going for Auburn Tigers' favor. Hugh Freeze, I will have him for one more season just in case. And Jonathan Smith, Michigan State, man, he was not the right guy after all. I mean, after that big debacle that happened with Mel Tucker and the sexual harassment or assault scandal and everything else, you would think that this is the guy that could supersede and drive Michigan State, but he is not the man. Michigan State needs another head coach. Why not James Franklin? I'm just saying. Seems like nobody wants to hire him right away for some reason. I don't know. Let's move on to third down and compare the top 10. Ohio State across the board, but that I'm just scratching my head. I'm going to wait till later on that. Alabama, Indiana, and Texas A&M. Those are my top 4. You look at the AP and coaches poll, there's some similarities, but out of order. Indiana, number 2. Maybe I could agree, but why not Indiana number 1? I'm just saying, because if you compare Indiana and Ohio State's record and the strength of schedule, Indiana has a harder schedule than Ohio State. Absolutely. And based on the wins and losses against their opponents, Indiana has played teams better records than Ohio State. 34-29 for Indiana, 29-27 for Ohio State. Okay. And I know Texas A&M is ranked number 3 and got first place votes. But then I'm looking at this and look, Texas A&M's schedule is going to get harder and harder from here on out. Not so much for Alabama. So I do understand that. And then for my rankings, man, there could be some changes going on depending on how it is. But I'm looking at the rest. Why we still have Oregon? Oregon had a chance. I don't think they're good enough now to be in the top 10. I'm going to disagree right there. Ole Miss had a chance to beat Georgia. All right. What I'm saying is more teams got to get up there, right? More teams. Like there's 130 something colleges, right? And there's so many, well, not so many undefeated teams, but there's a lot of one-loss teams. And yet here we are. We need to push these other schools in there. That's why we expanded. Let's make it diverse. Let's get equity involved in here. And don't tell me, oh, well, the talent here and there. Listen, the talent is spread all the way across. All right. These are the days that the colleges are not owning. We're not going to always hear Alabama or Clemson or Ohio State, which, okay, yeah, we got Ohio State still, but all the talent is going across the board. Well, it's not to say that it's now a new era for Indiana in the Big Ten because they're looking a lot better than last year. Okay. Um, Texas A&M looking a lot better than any other years, right? BYU quietly moving up, yet they're number 10 tied with Miami, which I disagree. BYU is a lot better than Miami. BYU by itself with Miami in the coaches poll. But let's be real. Let's be real. All right. Georgia Tech, I agree. Whether it's 7 or 8, they deserve it. But let's put some oomph into Notre Dame. Look at their schedule where they started and look what they're doing now. There's a big difference from the first 2 weeks till now. Okay. But you don't see Notre Dame playing against like Citadel or or teams that are Division 3, Division 4, whatever it is. Okay. Let's be real about this. Let's look at the strength of schedule very quickly and let's be honest with ourselves. All right. Certain schools need more attention than the others. All right. I'm just saying. And I just can't wait. I can't wait for a week and a half from now, or yeah, the week from Tuesday, that we're going to see the first week of the college football committee making their first top 25 rankings. Hopefully, I'm similar to it. I'm telling you right now, I think I'm locked in for what I have, but it's what it is, right? But you want to check out the rest of my top 25, you go ahead and look at the website, 4downs3counts.com. It'll be published later on after this podcast. Let's go ahead and move on. In comparison with Ohio State, Indiana, and Alabama, if you look at the three, Alabama has a harder schedule. Their opponents are win victories are 36 compared to Indiana 34 and Ohio State 29. And it's just, again, more ranked teams for Alabama. Indiana looks like they got the easier at the end bargain there. But if you compare, I'm looking at Ohio State and Indiana, the way they play Illinois. Indiana beat Illinois 63-10. And if you look at the later, when was that? September 20th. And if you look at October 11th, Ohio State beat Illinois 34-16. What does that mean? Should Ohio State and Indiana win out, we will see a Big Ten conference championship between these two teams. And it's going to be interesting to see, will we see a new face in the Big Ten? Just saying. I'm liking it there. I'm liking it. All right, let's move on to the college football playoffs. My predictions so far with Ohio State, Alabama, A&M, and I'm sorry. Let's start all over again. Ohio State, Alabama, Indiana, and Texas A&M in the top 4. Predicting that the Big Ten belongs to Ohio State. SEC is Texas A&M. I'm also predicting Georgia Tech in the ACC and BYU in the Big 12. And the 5th best conference, I believe, is the American Conference, with Navy at this moment in first place. So how would this develop? Man, I would love to see Notre Dame versus Vanderbilt, the 8 and 9. Georgia Tech and Miami. Let's put it this way. We know that if the ACC, if during the ACC channel, I do expect that any ACC right now will be higher than 7. BYU versus Cincinnati in the same conference. Again, this is going to be awesome because I believe that one of these two teams will make it. And then Georgia versus Navy, that's like a bye week there. I feel like it's a shame for a 12-team seed. I feel like the 12-team team and this bracket has no advantage whatsoever. And whoever's locked in at number 5 are looking good for the rest. And if you remember, Ohio State was number 5 in the college football playoffs last year and won it all. So who will be number 5 at the end of this season? Oh, man, this is great. This is great. Let's move on to 4th down, baby. And here it is. These are my top 4 games for this weekend. Looking ahead very, very early. Okay. My initial remarks here is this. Georgia defeats Florida in their rival game in the alternate spot there in Jacksonville. Then on the other side, and still remaining SEC, I got Vanderbilt upsetting Texas in Texas. And then Oklahoma over Tennessee. Those are three games in SEC that are looking solid. And then, unless I'm moving over to the Big 12, I'm loving this game. Cincinnati, Utah. No one's hardly talking about Cincinnati. Now they're making noise. Everyone wants to make comments about the Bearcats now. But I got a feeling now we're going to separate. This week, we are separating from pretenders, contenders. You was this close. Now you're not close anymore. That's that type of week. Cincinnati defeats Utah. 4 teams on the road. All 4 teams will be victorious this weekend. What's your pick? What's your favorite game this weekend? Leave your comments below. Share with me. And I would love to share whatever responses or comments you made for this show on my next week's episode. All right, final whistle. Oh, yeah. It is lovely, baby. Lovely. This definitely wraps up this week's edition of All Four Downs. Upsets, hot seats, rankings, and predictions. I'm covering it all. But be sure to follow, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Until next time, I'm Obi1. Thank you for listening to All Four Downs.